Welcome to the Shoulda Bet More podcast presented by Go Boys. Coming up on the show, Scott Seidenberg of pregame.com will join us. We'll talk all the NBA playoffs, even some NHL playoffs. Scott's very good with the NHL, some baseball. Excited to talk to Scott. And we will start here with the NBA. An interesting weekend. The series are really good. A couple tied at 2-2, the other two at 2-1, two games on Monday. So the series are good. The series are compelling, but the games have not been very good. And I will just start here. Wolves Nuggets. I was dead wrong. I thought the series was over at 2-0, and there is very little in sports that's as compelling as a team going to the mat, going up to defend its title the way Denver did on the road, people counting them out. And look, people after the fact, whether it's in the media or people on the Nuggets, Jokic, the coach, and I don't know if Jokic or anything, Malone's made comments, hey, people counting us out. What were we supposed to do for 3 or 4 days after you basically lost by 100? You lost your first 2 games at home. What are we supposed to do? Oh, well, it's not going to matter if Denver's going to win. I understand, hey, maybe people kick dirt on them too quickly. And I did throw that caveat. Hey, it's Jokic. Maybe we are kicking dirt too quickly, but you got to pick a side. You got to pick a team, and you have to go based on what you watch. And based on what you watch, Minnesota was completely dominating. And anyone in the media, and I've seen people say, oh man, all you guys kicked dirt on Jokic and the Nuggets way too quick. Well, you could have put Denver 20-1 to win the title on Friday. So show me your Denver 20-1 to win it all tickets, because you could have had Denver 20-1 to win it all. You could have them 5-1 to win this series. So, if it was so obvious they were going to come back, how much did you bet on those? Because you should have bet a lot of money if you're this confident. So I don't know. I haven't had a great feel for this series. Obviously, I thought this was over after game 2. I mean, my original pick was Nuggets in 7. I was worried after game 1, and then after game 2, I was flat out wrong and that Minnesota would win. I guess I'm on track for Denver in 7, and the pick that I gave out was Minnesota plus 1.5 games, which somehow has serious jeopardy of not getting home. Because look, could you be shocked if Denver wins the next 2 games? I don't think you could. I mean, I guess the most likely thing is the split and you're headed for a game 7. But when home court hasn't meant anything, that's kind of the North Star in the playoffs is home court. And, the zigzag, and hey, you lose 1 game, but you go home and you take care of business when nobody can win at home. And we saw this in baseball with Houston, Texas in the ALCS, where the road team won every single game, and even Arizona against the Phillies, where Arizona, both teams that went to the World Series were down 3-2 heading on the road for 6 and 7, and the road teams went 4-0 and the road teams won. But that's baseball, where it's more about the pitching. Home field isn't as prevalent as in football and basketball. Basketball, home court usually holds up, and you just kind of throw it out, I guess, in the series. I do think Denver's going to win. Minnesota played terrible. Minnesota does some stupid things. By the way, Gobert, and I'll get to the Knicks here in a minute because Tibbs drove me nuts, but Gobert drives me absolutely crazy. I mean, he shoves the guy with 2 hands in the back. Then he gets called for a foul, and he looks around like, hey, what did I do? How could you possibly call? I mean, you shoved the guy into the 3rd row. What do you mean? How could they call that? I mean, how could they not call that? Towns does some stupid things with the fouls. Edwards was great, but other than that, Minnesota looked really like a dumb team. And Jokic had an answer every time Minnesota creeped back. And this was 15 at half. And I guess I should mention that sequence too, because Denver was up 15, maybe 5 minutes to go in the half, and it looked like they're ready to give the knockout punch. NBA, you can never have too big of a lead. 15 is a significant lead, but I mean, you know how it goes. And quickly that leads down to 7, and Minnesota was about to steal the momentum going into halftime for whatever momentum was worth. And, for as bad as they played, to be only down 7 or 8 going into the half, hey, that you would take that if you're Minnesota. Then in the blink of an eye, it's 15 again, right at the half. Denver hits a little flurry. Minnesota throws the ball away after a dunk, and Murray just catches off balance and right out of his hand. I don't know how everyone else felt. Right out of his hand, I said, wow, I think that's going in. And that was all net. 15-point lead at the half. It really never got closer than double digits. I know the final was an 8-point game, but that was in garbage time where Minnesota, made a late charge and never got it closer. I think Denver inbounded once down 6. Jokic got a dunk, but that was with 20-something seconds left. Minnesota was never really threatened in the second half. Anytime they creeped to 10, 11, 12, Jokic had an answer either with a score, a shot, and man, he made some incredible passes, some incredible floaters. Jokic is the best player in the league for a reason. So I would expect that Denver has figured something out here, and I'd expect Denver now wins the series, whether it's 6, 7. I'm not going to sit here and guess. I've been wrong on the series before, so I don't know. I'll stick with my original Denver in 7, but again, I've jumped back on. I don't know. I guess Denver wins. It'd be hard. Same way it was hard last week to say, hey, I think Denver's going to turn around and win the series after it's 2-0 Minnesota. It'd be very hard to sit here when it's 2-2 and Minnesota has had a chance to put Denver away. Say, you know what I think is going to happen? I think Minnesota's going to get off the mat, and I think they're going to win the series. But hey, it's been a crazy series, so if it takes another turn, you know what? Who knows at this point? Very strange series. It was a very strange game too Sunday with all the twists and turns and the little runs. And Denver gave them opportunities to get back in the game, but Every time Denver needed to score, they did. Denver at 2-2. They are now minus 155 favorite to win the series, 4.5-point favorite. Game 5 is on Tuesday, plus 400 to win it all. And I mentioned, hey, they were 20-1 on Friday at some books. I know Caesars had 20-1 to win it all. Certainly seems like a missed opportunity looking back. The other game on Sunday, and I'll get to the Monday games here in a minute. What Thibodeau is doing is completely ridiculous. First of all, he ran his entire team into the ground, not just all season, but these playoffs. Games 1 and 2, playing these guys 48 minutes. I get it. You're trying to win a game. Let somebody else play 3-4 minutes. If they can't play 3, 4, 5 minutes, Burks, Achua, whoever, put me out there for 4 minutes. Put somebody out there for 4 or 5 minutes just to give your guy a breather. If you can't do that, he shouldn't be on the team. And now, Hartenstein's banged up. Anunoby, we're not going to see the rest of the season. He's completely run his team into the ground. And to really compound the problem, they're down 37 points in the third quarter. They're down 28 at half. Brunson's playing with a bad foot. Hart's played a million minutes. DiVincenzo's played a million minutes. You're down 28 at the half. You're not going to come back and win the game. I know, hey, NBA, anything can happen. You can blink and it's a 12, 13-point lead, then you go for it. So I get starting the second half with it and say, hey, maybe we can take a chunk out of this league and go from 28 to 15, and then we'll see where we're at. And we don't want to give up on a playoff game. But when you're down 37 in the third quarter, it might be time to get the guys out of there. He let them play basically the entire third quarter. Okay, got him out for the fourth and maybe a minute or two left in the third. You got to be a little quicker to the switch there if you're Thibodeau. Just completely ridiculous coaching, not just leaving these guys in. The whole minute management, just in general in these playoffs, that he's going to get destroyed if they lose this series. It's not going to be, hey, bad luck. They had some bad luck with the injury bug bit them. No. Your coach ran your entire team into the ground. That's why they got hurt. And he is going to have a lot of questions to answer if the Pacers come back and win the series. I still don't think they will. I know Pacers have flipped to the favorite here. I think the Knicks will get 5 at home. Pacers will probably get 6, and the Knicks probably win a close game 7. Would I be shocked if Indy won? No, of course not. Knicks are just running out of bodies, running out of gas here. It's like a car with a couple of flat tires. But, look, at Friday night, we were pretty close to the Knicks. I think we're up 93-85. We were pretty close to the Knicks being up 3-0. And the Knicks got a friendly whistle in game 1, so you can't complain. But the Pacers got a friendly whistle in game 3. The Knicks let some opportunities go by, the wayside. Offensive rebounds to Indy where Knicks just looked tired. So Knicks could have easily been up 3-0. So I know it's easy to look at game 4 and say, oh man, the Pacers have killed them these games in Indy and the Knicks are shot. Knicks could have easily won and be up 3-1 here. And you wouldn't feel the same way about this series. So I think they'll play better in game 5. It'd be hard to play worse. Beat the Garden. Brunson maybe get a little breather in the fourth. Maybe that carries over as he finally gets to sit down for a couple of minutes again. What Thibodeau did is just completely ridiculous coaching. Somebody's got to be in it. Does he have an assistant somewhere say, hey, Tom, what are we doing here? We're down 40 points. Get the guys out of the game. And maybe he does and he won't listen to him. But, have some common sense. Have some sense of the big picture if you're Thibodeau. You can't just keep running these guys into the ground. There's a reason. You're not the first guy in the history of the NBA to have a bad bench where you want to just play all your starters. There's a reason they don't do it. Everybody gets tired. There's a reason, even if you have a bad bullpen, you don't pitch your starter 9 innings every game, 162 innings, 162 games a year. You let your starter go 9 innings. There's a reason for it. My goodness, just crazy, absolutely crazy coaching. But I wouldn't count the Knicks out. I think they win game 5. As far as the games Monday, I've had no feel for this OKC Dallas series. I thought OKC after game 1, Luka banged up. I thought this was OKC series. They've looked young. They have not looked great. They've been very spotty in big spots here in these games. They haven't gotten great shots. They looked a little small. I guess Dallas wins this year. I just have a hard time seeing OKC win on the road with this young team. They're very competitive teams. I think OKC is maybe slightly better. Luka's not 100%. Kyrie hasn't been great, but I just think OKC's too young, and I don't really trust them to win on the road. Not a game I'm betting. I guess Dallas would win, but I'm certainly shaken here with my Oklahoma City. I thought Oklahoma City would win a 6-7 game series, a long series, and maybe that'll still be the case, but certainly my confidence has shaken here a bit after a couple of bad performances. And that one bad performance at home, and game 2 is where they let it get away because they killed them in game 1. Game 2 had a chance to, hey, you go up 2-0, you make Dallas be in a position where they got to win 4 out of 5. You're really in the driver's seat, and they let that game get away. And then had a 10-point lead in the second half on Saturday in game 3, let that get away. And now it is 2-1 Dallas. So I thought long series before, probably still a long series, but OKC has concerned me here. Boston seems to be the same script over and over again where they just give one game away, they get absolutely buried, and then they bury the other team in the rest of the game. So they don't play competitive games, whether they're winning by 20 or losing by 20. They play the most boring games ever. So I'd expect they win and win comfortably on Monday. I'll go Cavs team total under, what was it, 101.5. I just think that maybe, and you always worry when they get comfortable, maybe they've got their little wake-up call and they focus defensively. And outside of Mitchell, there's not a ton of talent on offense. And Mitchell's a hell of a scorer, but there's not a ton of talent for this Cleveland offense where it's just, I mean, the Darius Garlands of the world, Max Strus and some of these guys, it's not a ton of firepower for the Cavs. So I think Boston probably learned the lesson. Boston is going to dance into the final here. I mean, I can't remember, and I've talked about this a few times, but it keeps exaggerated. It keeps being reinforced. What a easy path this is to the final for Boston. I mean, if they get this shell of an Indiana team, or this, or not even a shell of an Indiana, but just a mediocre Indiana team, this complete mash unit of a Knicks team, the Cavs in the conference semifinals. I mean, they are going to have to basically not break a sweat, and they're going to be sitting here in June waiting for. I guess it's the Nuggets again. I don't know. I mean, Nuggets, T-Wolves, Nuggets. We're all kind of counting out the winner of Dallas OKC. Maybe we shouldn't be, but the Celtics are going to be in the finals. We'll see who they play here. As these playoffs, let's face it, they've been a little disappointing. Knicks have played a bunch of good games, a bunch of barn burners. Like I said, these series, a few of them are 2-2, and the other ones are 2-1. So we don't have any sweeps. Maybe we're looking at some longer series, but the games night to night, haven't been great. But the Denver subplot of them getting off the mat has really been interesting. I've really enjoyed that this weekend. So we will discuss that and more with Scott Seidenberg. That is next. This is the Shoulda Bet More podcast. All right, we are back. Shoulda Bet More podcast. You can hear pregame.com, the Dream Preview podcast, straight out of Vegas AM. It is the great Scott Seidenberg, first-time guest. He joins us now. Scott, what's up, man? Thanks for coming on.
Well, what's going on? Exciting weekend.
It has been an exciting weekend. The games themselves haven't been great, but I like these series when it's 2-1, especially in the NBA, when you kind of figure out where the series is going. If the team that's up 2-1 wins, it's 3-1, and it's probably going to be a shorter series. And if it's the team trailing that wins, you're probably looking at a longer series. So, and I guess we'll start here. Denver responds, and they look like the champions. And there's very few things in sports cooler than when a champion defends its belt, especially under some adversity when nobody thought they were going to do it. And they really win these two games in Minnesota convincingly. Now minus 145 series favorites. Man, I was wrong. I thought the series was over after 2. Do you look at this as, hey, now they figured Minnesota out, they're going to go on and win the series and go to the finals? I know a lot of people probably think that. Or do you think Minnesota has a chance here to respond?
Well, I do think Minnesota has a chance to respond. And I like you, thought the series was over. But I think Denver, it's not that they figured out Minnesota. I think Denver really had max effort. And it's hard to say like, oh, they didn't have effort in the first 2 games. But to a man, they all talked about how much the media wrote them off after the first 2 games of the series. And I know like people laugh at the idea of bulletin board material because it's the freaking playoffs. Like you're mass motivated in every single game, right? But I think with their backs against the wall, down 0-2, seeing all the reports about how last year was a soft run and they didn't have to play the Celtics in the finals. They weren't really tested last year. And this year they're being tested, and maybe they're just not that great of a champion. And I think they were out to prove that they are, and they do have the heart of a champion. And I've been impressed with the performances the past 2 games. I think it's very impressive that the road team has won all 4 games of this series, something that I don't think we see a lot in these NBA playoffs.
No, it reminds me a little bit. Remember in baseball in the ALCS where Texas Houston, the road team, won every single game. And it's just, yeah. And look, we're so wired to just, hey, home court, home field means something. A little less so in baseball, much less so in baseball. But it's, hey, we're down 2-1, but we're going home. Home court has always meant something. So it's hard to retrain our brains to be like, home court means absolutely nothing. So, look, I get, if I was Malone, I would do the same thing, try to motivate my team, show everybody, count us out. But what are we supposed to do? We got 3 days to talk about the game. You just lost by 100 points. You're down 0-2. What are we supposed to? Oh, Denver looks great. They're going to win. Like, I don't know what people expect.
No, I think that there was an obvious, the zigzag that we talked about. Team wins first 2 games, and then the bounce back there by the team down 0-2. But usually we talk about that when they lose the first 2 games on the road and then return home. And I think it was just very impressive for Denver to go on the road down 0-2 and not just win game 3, but win game 4. You have to be impressed with Jokic and his performance. And for all the conversation, and I do think that this part's funny. Like when Jamal Murray scores only 8 points on 3 of 18 shooting, he's hurt. When he scores 24 points on 11 of 21, oh, he's okay. And
Sure.
then when he, and then another bad shooting night, but he does the 8 assists and he contributes in other ways, and he hit that monster half court shot at the buzzer, and everyone's kind of like, oh, maybe he's not hurt. So I think all the talk about players banged up, I think it's everyone's banged up. It's the playoffs, right? The NBA season is a marathon. We know it's too long and everyone's banged up. There should be no excuses. So let's just chalk it up to just performances, good performances by players when they needed it the most.
Yeah, and Minnesota was not impressive. As great as they looked on the first couple games, and maybe we should have seen this coming. It's like, hey, this is not a team that went 73-9. This is still like they're a good team, but maybe they played a little above their head those first 16. They came apart at the seams. Stupid foul after stupid foul. Gobert missing free throws. Gobert shoving people in the back with 2 hands. Then they call a foul. He's looking around like, hey, what did I do? Like, come on. It's just Minnesota drives you a little crazy sometimes. But let me throw these numbers at you. Game 5, Denver -4.5. Denver for the series -165. Denver to win it all +400. Take whatever number you want. Take any of those sound appetizing to you.
I don't like Denver for the series. I think there's a little bit of an overreaction here. The 4.5 is an interesting number because let's go back to game 1 and Minnesota's coming off, a sweep. They're undefeated in these playoffs. Denver laying 4.5 at home in game 1. All right. So then they lose the 2 games, and obviously everyone's all hyped up about Minnesota. And then Denver wins these 2 games. And yet the line is the same as it was in game 1. I don't agree with that. I feel like it should be Denver maybe 2.5, or maybe 3.5 at the most. Because I think this series looks different now. So I don't agree that it's the same as we went into game 1 with both of these teams.
How about this? This is the bet I gave out for this series. Are you ready? Minnesota plus a game and a half. How about that? Not
it.
even. Yeah, but that's not. I mean, I was basically ready to just cash that out, or not cash it out,
well,
but just ready to cash the ticket. Now it's like, oh man, if I don't, there's no guarantee with home court not meaning anything. Boy.
I wouldn't be surprised if this goes 7.
No,
this
neither would I.
Neither would
I. Let me ask you then. Where do you think this goes? Is it Denver and 7?
I think it just goes 7.
Okay.
And I'm not prepared to pick a winner right now in 7. I'd be happy to play the line and maybe take the dog in game 7, depending on what that spread is. So let's predict that line. Okay. Let's play this out. Denver's a 4.5 point favorite. Let's say they win at home. They take a 3 games to 2 series lead. Series goes back to Minnesota. Minnesota wins game 6 to force a game 7. What's the line in game 7?
Probably 4. Probably.
It has to be less than 4.5, right?
Yeah, just because it's a little tighter and they say, hey, it's game 7, we'll shrink everything. The total gets a little lower. That means the spread has to get a little, not by much. I mean, you're not going to adjust it too much, especially if these teams just hold serve at home, then you're not really, unless one of them's a blowout or some injury. And if these are just kind of routine wins for both teams, I think we're probably looking around the same number with a tick down just because the total will be a little lower. Game 7, everything's a little tighter.
Denver was 7.5 point favorites in game 2.
Yeah, that was
after the loss.
Yeah. That's one of the more, and I'm not a huge trend guy. That's one of the more overpowering, like stronger trends when you lose game 1 at home. Not only do you win game 2, you usually murder the team. That's why everyone's like, oh man, we've seen this so many times where they lose game 1. Okay, fine. Get back on track game 2. Now we have a series. The fact that they didn't win and got blown out, it went the other way. That's why people kind of threw their hands up and said, all right, you know what? This is Minnesota. But I don't know. It's interesting. I do think Denver wins, but look, if you asked me 3 days ago, I was confident Minnesota wins. So we'll see. And there was 21. There was 21 on Denver on Friday to win it all.
Yeah,
seems like a missed opportunity, but
I just wouldn't. I don't think I'd lay the 165 to 170 on Denver for the series. I think it's a lot closer than that. I think Minnesota has shown you that it's a lot closer than that.
We'll move on here. You are a Knicks fan. I'll give you the floor here. I guess I'll ask it this way. I killed Tibbs in the open. You can't, you're down 37, 40 points. Brunson in there at the end of the 3rd quarter. To me, it makes no sense. It's inexcusable. How much of a problem did you have with Tibbs leaving his guys in there? And how do you think they get off the mat here for game 5?
Well, I of course you have a problem with it, but they didn't really play in the 4th quarter. So just, to play out the 3rd quarter, the guys, everyone, they want to compete. Guys want to play. And for as bad as Brunson has been, I'm not sure that we can just say that it's all fatigue. I think it's fatigue, and Doris Burke made a great comment on the broadcast about how every shot was just short, which is a telltale sign that you don't have your legs underneath you, right? You're just not getting that same lift on your shot so that everything's hitting the front of the rim. And so he does need the rest. I thought, Josh Hart clearly needed the rest, the guy that never came out of the game. DiVincenzo looked gassed. The Knicks' biggest problem going into this series was depth. And I think Indiana's done an incredible job of exploiting that. Not only have they done an incredible job of running the Knicks out of the gym to the point where they're just absolutely gassed, but the way that Neesmith is guarding Jalen Brunson is got to be very frustrating for both Brunson and for the Knicks, because without him running the offense, they don't have an offense. Right? Like, yeah, the Knicks can play in transition and they can hit, and DiVincenzo can pull up and hit transition threes, but their entire half court game is reliant on Jalen Brunson. And when he's being picked up 3/4 of the court down and being bodied and bullied so that he has to give the ball up early, it completely takes the Knicks out of their offense. And I think that's more telling about Tom Thibodeau. Not that he's leaving his guys in and not giving his bench run and gassing his players, but that he hasn't found an adjustment to make sure that Jalen Brunson can get the ball and set up their offense.
Yeah, I mean, as good as the vibes are around this Knicks team, and just, hey, it's so much fun to have them back and the Garden's rocking. I wouldn't be surprised if they win game 5, and we'll get to game 5 in here in a minute. I do think if they ever lost to this series, I think Tibbs would be a rough summer for him. I think he would get killed, in the narrative would be, and you hear this around Knicks fans, that he ran his team into the ground, that these injuries weren't a coincidence. It wasn't bad luck. These guys all got hurt because they played too many minutes. He's a baseball manager that doesn't use his bullpen, where, of course these pitchers are going to burn their arms out. It's, you didn't reinvent the wheel too. It's not like, you're not the first guy that's had a bad bench and good starters, and there's a reason these teams play the bench, even though the bench isn't good. Like Jokic, sure, you don't want to take him off the court, but you take him off the court to give him a breather. I mean, there's a reason teams do this. It seems like, he tried to reinvent the wheel a little bit.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of signs in the regular season that we can go back to and be like, it would have been nice for Brunson to get a rest here. It would have been nice for, DiVincenzo to not play here. But I think and the way that the defensive intensity that the Knicks played with during the regular season. Yeah. I mean, sometimes, and we've learned this in watching like some of these veteran teams, like over the past couple of years, like you'd watch the Golden State Warriors, or I think maybe that's a bad example. I think the Lakers are probably the best example of this. And I would make this comment all the time. In the NBA, more than half the league makes the playoffs. And when you are a team that is good enough to make it into that postseason, then there are nights during the regular season where you're just not going to play. Like and I'm not saying sit out for load management. I'm just saying the intensity is not there, because it's one of 82, and it doesn't matter if we win or lose, because what matters is being healthy in a 7-game series in the playoffs, where the more talented team usually wins out. That's not how Thibodeau coached this team during the regular season. He coached this team to win every game in the regular season.
And I don't want to be a hypocrite, because I admire that, and I think the load management has really hurt the league. And Popovich started this a while ago, and it was a bad domino effect where, hey, if you're going to rest our guys, I'm going to rest my guys. Then all of a sudden you have a league where just nobody's playing, it seems. But I don't know. There is a happy medium, and it just doesn't feel like Thibodeau has struck that balance. Do you think they win game 5?
I do. I do think that because you can, the Garden crowd can pull you out of the fatigue. They could muster up some energy here with the Garden crowd. And also the fact that they got rest in the fourth quarter is going to help them here, in this game. Do I think that they win game 6 and win this series? I don't. I think I would have to take the Pacers in game 6 at home. I think the more likely scenario is that this series goes 7.
Yeah. I thought this was Knicks in like 5 or 6 going into the series, but once the guys got hurt, I was like, you know what? I just don't see this MASH unit winning a game in Indiana. That being said, I think it was 93-85 Knicks on Friday night with an 8-point lead, where it felt like, oh my God, Knicks are going to win this. And at 3-0, you know what? You can take Sunday off. You can do whatever Sunday.
Yep.
At 3-0, you're not blowing the series. So I think people are going to be quick to forget that too. Like, oh man, Indiana's just killed them the last 2 games. Now, Indiana was very lucky to win game 3. I can say the Knicks were lucky to win game 1, but I agree. I think the Garden will get them over the hump, and the Pacers are slight favorites now in this series.
After game 3, I was thinking about this. If you looked at the Knicks' losses in the postseason, it took two miraculous deep three-pointers to beat them, right? The Tyrese Maxey logo three, and then the Nimhard three for the Pacers to clinch that game, right? If Nimhard misses that three, the Knicks, the Knicks win that game
Yeah.
and go up 3 games to none. And then they could rest everybody in game four. Who cares? And then just win the series at home in game five. So I think you almost have to throw out what we saw here on Sunday and just go back to the Knicks' performance in game three and what we saw in the first 2 games of this series, where it's going to be close. It's going to come down to the wire. The blowouts, win by 10, win by 30, I don't think it matters. It shouldn't change your opinion on these teams.
If they do lose this series, you say, hey, good year, got hurt, nothing you could do about it, or will this be a bitter disappointment for you if they lose this series?
I don't want to call it a bitter disappointment because just beating Philly in the first round was a great accomplishment, and no one expects them to beat the Celtics in the next round anyway, right? So it's like, okay, you would have got a couple of more games. Maybe you pull an upset at home against Boston in one game, and
Or in game
everyone's
two, Boston loves to give away game two, so it has to be game two.
exactly. And then everyone's excited, but they're not beating Boston in the 4 out of 7. So I don't think it would be a huge disappointment, but I do think it would reinforce the need for this Knicks team to add a big piece this offseason.
The game's Monday. Celtics that we mentioned laying 8.5 against Cleveland. They seem to follow the same pattern where blowout. I mean, every game's a blowout, whether they win or lose. I mean, they punt one game, they get blown out in the way when they lose, and then they blow out the other team when they win. So they're laying 8.5. OKC Dallas, which is a series that's been really tricky. Luka's been hurt, then he looks fine. That's an interesting series. Dallas laying 1.5, basically a coin toss game. Either of these games you like, either of these games you have a strong opinion on.
I kind of like OKC.
Oh,
I mean, I do think if I picked Dallas to win the series, I think the low spread makes me want to stay away. But if this thing like ticks up, if the public money starts coming in on Dallas and you start to see any 2.5s or threes, which I doubt we're going to see, I would lean towards the Thunder. I think this is going to be a close game. I think just being down 2-1, you're going to get like just an incredible effort from the Thunder. As far as the Celtics are concerned, they're going to blow out the Cavs. The series is over. It's the same thing. It's the same thing that we saw against Miami. Drop that game 2, bounce back. They're gonna run them out of the gym. Boston's, like I said, they're not losing. They're not losing 4 out of 7 to anybody, and they're not losing multiple home games in the series. So when they win in Cleveland, they'll wrap up the series in 5.
hockey wise, anything you like? You're a Rangers fan too, so are you concerned that Carolina's back in the series, or you're not at that level yet? And just any thoughts in terms of like a bet you'd recommend, whether it's Conn Smythe, a future series bet, take it whatever direction you want.
No, I don't think Carolina's back in the series. I think Carolina got their win on home ice, and you can make the argument that they've outplayed the Rangers for the most part in this series. But even in that game when they took the lead, the Rangers came back and tied it at 3. So the Rangers have shown what they're capable of. There was obviously special teams goals that you're kind of surprised the Rangers give up. But as much as we talk about how great the Rangers special teams are, Carolina special teams are better. So I feel like people are forgetting that. I do think the Rangers end this on home ice. They're so good at the Garden. And I thought that Igor Shesterkin should be the Conn Smythe Award winner. And right now he is the favorite at plus 600. So if the Rangers win the cup, it's going to be because of their goaltending and especially how good he's been on home ice. That's where I think the strength comes in. 3 goals or less in it's double digits now, consecutive playoff games for Shesterkin on home ice at Madison Square Garden. That trend continues. The Rangers are going to win the cup. They're plus 425 to win it. They've dropped down behind Florida and Dallas. They were the favorite when they were up 3-0 against Carolina. I don't think anything's changed. So just getting a better number on the Rangers is nice. I like that. I think the West, I love Dallas, and I picked Dallas to win the cup, before the playoffs started. I picked them to win the cup last year, and I was a year ahead. I was kind of like, man, like this, I saw everything I love about this team. I went through this whole like checklist last year of going through the past like several Stanley Cup champions and seeing what they all had in common. And really the only team that fit the criteria was Dallas last year. Now they lose to Vegas in the Western Conference final, and it is what it is. Vegas goes on to win. I think if Dallas went to the Cup final, Dallas would have won last year. I think Dallas is better this year. And so seeing them doing what they're doing, especially against the Avalanche now, up 2-1, does not surprise me. I still think they're going to win this series, but I do think that the Western Final is going to be challenging for Dallas because we know Edmonton is fantastic and we know that they have relentless pressure. But I've been so impressed with Vancouver this postseason that you cannot count them out of any game. And I think whoever plays against Dallas in the Western Final, if that's what winds up happening, that is going to be a very challenging series for Dallas. And I'm not saying that a Rangers-Panthers series is not going to be challenging, but I think that for a team like Dallas that has to rely on defense, that has to rely on limiting the opposition and playing with a lead, when you're facing teams that are incredible and coming from behind, I don't know how much that suits you. Like Vegas is not great at coming from behind. So when Dallas got a lead, they just locked it down. Colorado is great at coming from behind, and it was a sweat for Dallas the other night. And it was just, they listen, game 1, they blow a 3-goal lead. Game 2, they almost blow a 3-goal lead. It's just a sweat every night. And that's what it's going to be like every single game for Dallas down the stretch. So if I had to make a pick now, I'd say it's Rangers. But these playoffs have been incredible. And I think that when you compare them to the NBA playoffs, where all these games have been blowouts with the exception of a handful of Knicks games,
Yeah, it's a good point.
the Stanley Cup playoffs are the ultimate watch.
Yeah, and it's not unusual the NBA playoffs are blowouts and chalky, but this year coming in, you figured, and injuries have really killed it, especially the East. But this year coming in, you figure, hey, it's a little more balanced this year. Some of these lesser teams are really good, but again, injuries everywhere. I mean, Kawhi, Giannis, Embiid wasn't healthy. I mean, just go down all the Knicks guys. I mean, there's just Dame. There's so many guys that got hurt. So you're saying Rangers over Dallas in the final? That's what you like?
That's what I picked before the play. Well, I picked Dallas to win the cup before the playoffs started. But now seeing the way that these teams are playing in the postseason, to me, it's I'm not just going to pick who's going to win, but I'll go Rangers against Dallas in the final. And I think you lost the value on the Rangers. I mean, I hate saying that, and that's like a cop out because people are like, give me a pick right now. But it's like when you could have bet plus 700 to win the East, and and now it's plus 425 to win the entire cup. It almost sours me on betting the Rangers. Now I know it's on the Dream Pod at pregame, we fine you for talking about a bet that you have in pocket, right? It's a fine because it doesn't
fines
help
me through text all the time, $40,
yes.
$80. He's very liberal with the fines.
Because it doesn't help you, it doesn't help the audience to talk about a bet you had have in pocket. But as someone who is holding that Rangers 7-1 ticket to win the East, my stance is exactly the same. This team had the best record in the entire league. They have home ice advantage throughout the entire playoffs, and they are incredible at home, and they have a goaltender that's incredible at home. So why are they being disrespected in the market in terms of the number to win, whether it's the East or win the entire cup? It just doesn't make sense to me. And then you want to say, all right, home ice doesn't mean much. For this team, it does. Like, they are very good at Madison Square Garden.
Last couple ones before I get you out of here. How is your baseball betting going? I guess I'll ask it this way. Do you think the Yankees win the division? Are you enjoying watching this Yankee team more than in past years? They do feel a little more balanced, a little more fun to watch. Soto, more lefties.
Yeah, Soto's incredible. I do think the Yankees win the division because we know that, one, Garrett Cole's coming back, which is a massive addition for the Yankees. And I thought that the Orioles getting John Means and Bradish back was a big help for them, but Garrett Cole's a different animal. We're talking about the best pitcher in Major League Baseball. That's a massive acquisition early in the midpoint of the season. And then we know that the Yankees are going to be aggressive in the trade market. So I think that the Yankees bullpen, the Yankees starting rotation is maybe not what we're going to see down the stretch when you add Garrett Cole and possibly another starter. I think that when healthy, guys like Verdugo have just added a different element to the Yankee lineup. I do think the Yankees win the division, and I might lose my Baltimore season win total under bet, but I do think the Yankees will win the division over the Orioles.
Yeah, I would definitely love an upgrade in the rotation. I just don't know. It's so hard to get starting pitching at the deadline that's any good. You end up overpaying for it. I mean, look at what they gave up Frankie Montas a couple years ago. I mean, they've had their
Terrible.
troubles. Yeah, just terrible. I'd almost rather go bullpen. Like the Cardinals might be out of it. That kid Helsley at the end of the game. You know what?
Yep.
Double up on these hard throwers. Just be able to shorten the game. I mean, we remember '96. That was the secret sauce of those great Yankee teams. Yeah, good, really good everyday lineup. Great starting pitching. But man, they could come in with Stanton, Nelson. I mean, they just had arms after arms. I would just try to pick off some of these hard throws at the end of the game and just because I think they have an okay bullpen. Blake's a good pitching coach. They have a habit of developing arms. If I was going to do one thing, I'd try to pick off some of these hard throwers and just try to make it where you got 2 or 3 lockdown guys at the end of the game. I don't completely trust Holmes. I have to admit he's been good, but I'd like a little assurance where I can just have, a couple more guys that are just real power arms at the end.
Yeah, what would be great is if you can get a team's closer
Yeah.
that is out of it that winds up being your setup man for Clay Holmes. You mentioned Helsley. That would be fantastic. Getting somebody like what's
It's not A's are not going to trade Mason Miller. I don't know if that's what you think. I don't think they would
no,
trade him with
Mason Miller's
5 years of control. I know he's been mentioned.
no,
I
no,
guess
no.
if you gave him the perfect offer, they might think about it. I don't know who else.
No,
You think.
the guy who I was thinking of is from the Giants, Doval.
Oh, Doval's really good.
Yeah,
Really good.
like what's San Francisco doing this year? Like
Yeah.
I don't think they're a postseason team. And so if you can get Camilo Doval from the Giants and that they have a smart organization that would be willing to take on some prospects and whatnot. I mean, that would be an incredible addition to the bullpen. So
Sure, they'll ask for like Dominguez or somebody, but you can
yeah,
talk them down from Dominguez. And I agree.
yeah.
That's the route I would go because that feels more gettable, more impactful than, hey, I'm going to add somebody's third or fourth starter. And I might be able to help me in the, in the postseason where, hey, I got Cole. I got a really good lineup for a change. I want to shorten the game and get some hard throwers here.
Yeah, they're probably in terms of like a starting pitcher, you have to look at the bet. I mean, the Marlins are already sellers,
Yeah.
right? With the trading Luis Ariz. Do they want to part ways with one of their young arms? A Braxton Garrett, a Jesus Luzardo.
Luzardo would help.
One of those guys. So that would be obviously a team that you're going to look for. The Rockies. I don't think there's anybody on the Rockies you would even want. So forget about them. But we know that a lot of these guys have incredible home road splits in Colorado.
Right.
But there's no one I'd be interested in there. So I think it's going to be curious to see which teams fall off and who'd be willing to part ways. And I'll tell you right now who's real interesting. If the Houston Astros continue on this downward trajectory, they are such an old team right now that is in big need of a transition. I wonder how much that organization would be willing to hit the reset button and say, listen, we won our championships. We've been as close to a dynasty in the American League as you could be the past several years, right? With, going to the ALCS every single year. With all the guys getting older, with the money that they have committed, I mean, why not hit the reset button and acquire some young talent? And maybe they'd be willing to part ways with some arms.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. I don't know. I mean, Yankees and Astros doing business for like Framber Valdez. That seems like it would be hard, but who knows? And the rest of the division hasn't really pulled away from Houston as bad as they've been. They look up, they're like 6.5 out, where it's like, man,
yeah, that's true.
Bad as they are, it's not like they're 10, 12 games out where you could say, hey, we get hot for a week or 10 days where, we could be 2 out or 3 out. And then, remember, they came from way behind last year against Texas to win it. Last one, your Jets are going to be good this year. Yes.
Yes, I think the Jets make the playoffs. I think they go over their win total. It's just what's surprising to me about everyone's outlook on the Jets this offseason as opposed to last offseason is that there's not the same optimism, even though the Jets are actually better this offseason than they were last season.
Flying under the radar a little bit.
Yeah, and Rodgers being there, like why don't the Jets have the same hype around the league that they had last offseason when they acquired Aaron Rodgers? Because Rodgers didn't play last year. So, and I know you're saying, quarterback coming off of the Achilles, whatever. But like Atlanta has the hype with Kirk Cousins. Well, like the Jets should have that. And Cousins, it was his plant foot as opposed to Rodgers, opposite foot. So it's a little different as far as throwing. I think Rodgers' rehab and everything is much easier than that. So shouldn't everyone be excited about the Jets? Because it's like, hey, they got Aaron Rodgers, right? Like, and they got better players. Like the offense is better. They've upgraded the offensive line tremendously. Their biggest issue last year, they went out and upgraded it. So why don't the Jets get the same type of optimism that they got last offseason? It doesn't make sense to me, but I do think they're a playoff team this year.
Yeah, I think the people that picked them last year to do really well don't want to get burned 2 years in a row, and
Mhm.
that's the nature of
But I
we
think
go through
but
betting.
but they did something better this
Oh,
offseason,
they had
which
a really good
is
offseason. I think they had a really
which
good offseason.
which is bring in a veteran backup so that if Rodgers goes down, a guy like Tyrod Taylor can win you a couple of games.
I wish they would have hired Belichick. I wish somebody would have hired Belichick. I think he would have been perfect for them. I wish they would. I'm not a huge Salah fan, but I agree. I love the team. That defense. I mean, they still won 7 games with no quarterback play. Yeah, that defense, Wilson,
Yeah.
Hall. You bring in Mike Williams, the Western Kentucky receiver everybody loves. If you can protect Rodgers, man, he's not going to have to do that much to get you to I don't know, 11-win team. It's hard to say anyone's like a 13, 14-win team because the AFC is so good and there's so many good quarterbacks. But I don't know, 11 things break right, 12-5. I don't think that's impossible at all.
No, not at all. And I think Miami's going to be interesting this year. I think Buffalo is going to be down. Patriots, rookie quarterback, will fade them and the rookie coach. So we're going to fade the Patriots this year. So why can't the Jets go 4-2 in the
I agree.
division? Maybe
Sweep the
five.
Pats, split the other four, and then hey, we're 4-2, and then we'll go from there.
Exactly. Maybe even 5-1
Yeah.
in the division. Like that's not crazy to think that the Jets could be at minimum 4-2, 5-1 in the division.
And hey, maybe somebody else, maybe Buffalo loses their quarter. If you're a Jet fan, if you're the Jets, say, hey, we lost our quarterback last year. Maybe this is the Buffalo's chance where Allen gets hurt in week 3 or 4 and they lose their quarterback. And then now
Yeah.
all of a sudden things look differently. So yeah, things look an injury can change things. And I think they're better equipped this year. Scott, you're the best man. We got to do this more. I appreciate you coming on. Let everyone know where they can find you.
Yeah, on Twitter at Scott's on Air, SCOTTSONAIR. And yeah, listen to Straight Out of Vegas every single day, wherever you get your podcasts from. And of course, the Dream Preview, RJ Bell's Dream Preview, courtesy of pregame.com.
All right, man. We'll do this again down the road. Appreciate it.
Anytime. Well, thanks.
All right, that'll do it. Thank you, Scott Seidenberg. We'll be back Wednesday, talk more playoffs, baseball. See you then. Don't forget to rate, review, subscribe. Talk to you Wednesday.